I'd like to call this meeting of the Gladstone City Commission for Monday, December 22nd, 2014, 7 p.m. to order. First item on our agenda is the invocation, which will be said by Commissioner Nemechek. All rise, please.
Let us pray. We're grateful tonight for the promise of Christmas. We hope that you'll be with us tonight as we tackle the problems of the city of Gladstone. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the acting city clerk call a roll, please?
Commissioner Nemechek,
Here.
Commissioner Bostwick,
Here.
Commissioner Gay,
Here.
Commissioner Mattinen,
Here.
Mayor Mackey.
Here. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Anybody in the public would like to comment? If you take the mic, please. Director Geyer.
Good evening, Commissioners. Paul Geyer from Public Safety. I'd just like to make a brief public comment. The success of our Candy Cane and Can Drive program last night. I wanted to thank the community for the can donations that we received. I wasn't able to take part last night, but we had several of our volunteers and officers and members of the Escanaba Township Volunteer Fire Department going throughout town with the fire trucks collecting canned goods to help replenish St. Vincent de Paul's stocks. So it was another good, successful program this year, and just wanted to thank the city and the surrounding area for helping us out with that.
When they knocked at my door, my wife got there first, and we're babysitting two dogs, one of which is deaf, and she didn't know it was behind her, and got out the door, and Steinhoff caught it. So he brought it back to me. He says, "I'll trade you a candy cane for a dog."
Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would have probably let him keep the dog, but my wife said, no, I couldn't do that. Okay, on our consent agenda tonight, we have the City Commission regular meeting minutes of December 8, 2014. We have the DDA regular meeting minutes of December 9, 2014. We have Board of Review minutes of December 9, 2014, and we have payment of bills.
I'd move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I support it.
There's one correction that should be made in the DDA minutes. Commissioner Mattinen and I were there, but not listed in attendance.
With that correction, I would ask everybody in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion's carried. You got the motion support, right? Sorry about that. Next item on our agenda is public hearings, of which we have none. We have no unfinished business, so we move to new business, and our first item on the agenda for new business is a resolution to vacate Lowry Avenue. Darla.
We're just vacating a portion. Brian Heiding purchased this parcel of land from Earl Robinson last year, mid-2014. Maybe early 2014, I don't know, quite a while ago. And he had some problems with title work on it because of this Lowry Street, city-owned, not vacated, yet there's partial buildings on it. So Brian came to the city and asked us if we would work together in going through the process to vacate this portion of Lowry Street. So we told Brian, we work with Burkhart Lewandowski, Miller PC, and Don Bacon. Do you have a preference? And he felt comfortable with Attorney Don Bacon. So Attorney Don Bacon is representing both Brian Heiding and the city on this process. And we're at the point where we need the city commission to approve the resolution in your packet tonight. Has the legal description attached and the map of what we're actually vacating there, the portion. All the property owners have been notified several times per the requirements of vacating this. So,
Has anybody responded? No?
not in a negative way to stop the vacation. They understand it's not affecting any property owners around them except Brian Heiding's parcel.
Okay.
But property owners within 300 feet of this
I
vacation
understand.
all needed to be notified.
I understand.
What happens legally when you have platted property that has a public right-of-way in it that gets vacated, half of the property goes to the guy on one side of the right-of-way and half goes to the other guy on the other side, and it's as if the street had never been there. So,
But Brian owns all the property
Right.
always.
This is at the
so-
bottom of South Hill Road, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yep.
And it's like you would go straight instead of turn to go up the hill.
It's where the railroad tracks used to, go across the highway, if you can remember, when you vacated the railroad tracks for your, that property down there? Wasn't that
Yeah.
you?
Yeah,
That road was on that same line, right there.
okay.
This is where the storage, Summit Storage buildings are currently located.
Okay. And he wants to add to that?
Yes, he's adding more storage units. So when he first bought it, we said, well, you can't build over Lowry Street because that's city property basically, and, you know, we have no use for that.
Okay,
So we need to get that vacated and then he'll proceed with the storage units.
thank you.
I'd move to allow the mayor and clerk to sign attached resolution to vacate a portion of Lowry Street.
Support?
Moved by Commissioner Gay, supported by Commissioner Nemecheck to approve the resolution to vacate Lowry Avenue. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, that motion is carried. Next item on the agenda, we have a package in front of us from Ron and Jackie Miazzo for the DDA storefront project at 1016 Delta Avenue. And that meeting you just mentioned, Dave, I believe you're at the meeting when that was approved.
Right?
All of the commissioners attended that DDA meeting with the exception of Matt, who had to work, so I think everybody's pretty familiar with it. But, is there anything you want to add, Darla, or?
Nope, he purchased 1016 Delta Avenue, and it's in the DDA district, and is requesting the DDA help him out with the facade.
I would like to move approval and thank Ron and Jackie for locating on our main street.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Nemecheck, supported by Commissioner Mattinen to approve the facade grant request as recommended to the City Commission by the DDA. For 1016 Delta Avenue, the owners are Ron and Jackie Miazzo. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion is carried. Next item on our agenda is a lease agreement with DLP Market General Hospital Rampart EMS. This is, I think, just renewing a lease, isn't it?
Yeah,
Park an ambulance in the public safety garage?
correct.
Have there been- go ahead.
We're still okay with that, Paul? We're not crowded for room?
No, I mean, it fills up one of the bays in the fire hall, however, there's a benefit for both. You know, we receive a little bit of income from it and provides a better service for our area and ambulance response when they, you know, have rigs tied up in Escanaba. They come directly and use this one for anything north, so there's benefits for us and them, I think, so.
And they've been current on their payments on this?
Yes.
I think it's their off-duty people who live in this area who will respond to that ambulance, isn't it?
Correct. It depends on where the call is at and how they page it out, but yes, that's the,
That's the ambulance my wife and I used to take.
It's probably been replaced.
I
three times, but-
I only had a chauffeur's license. I never wanted a paramedic license.
While other people can drive great people.
We had to
around.
have a division of expertise there.
Step on it, we gotta go.
Were there any changes in this from the last year's lease? No changes at all. I can't remember if Duke Life Point owned Marquette General when we renewed this last time. That's the only reason I asked the question, if there was any changes.
Year lease, isn't it?
yeah,
So
I
no
don't
one-
recall
No, they
if they
won't
were.
go.
But there's no changes, so that's,
Very minimal impact on us. The main concerns I have is access to our fire hall, which can be done now with not having access to the other main part of the building, so. But they're still able to get
get the rating, utilize everything they need to, so.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the lease agreement as presented and allow the city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
I'll second.
Motion Commissioner Bostwick, supported by Commissioner Mettenen to renew the lease agreement with DLP Market General Hospital, Rampart EMS, along with the city manager to sign the agreement. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion's carried. Next item is equipment purchase. This will be Darla.
Yep, Mark is out of town, so I told him I would cover this for him. Mark Palega and I met, last week with a couple, Public Works employees, and they do have a list of equipment prioritized, you know, over the next couple years. But there was two things they felt, if the city could buy two new, plows that could be attached to current trucks that we have. If we buy new trucks, they're universal, they could attach to the new truck as well. That would really help them. The one plow, our mechanic has repaired and welded, and it's almost to the point of beyond repair, so why keep fixing something that's, you know, not worth fixing anymore? So two new plows, and then the skid steer they use quite a bit, and we got a price from Nortrax to fix that for us. It's about $6,000, including parts and everything, labor. So I asked, you know, the mechanic, if you were to fix it, buy the parts and you fix it, how long would it take you? And is that efficient use of your time, where would it be more efficient to contract that out and let him work on other equipment that we have? So that's what we decided, if we could allocate $6,000 to contract the skid steer out to Nortrax to be fixed, then he can work on other equipment that we have. Looking to transfer, so this is part of the general fund millage discussion, you know, how much of that should be allocated for new equipment. I'm looking just for a one-time transfer right now of $26,000 to purchase two new plows and fix the skid steer. And then we're also working on, so they wanted to, the request put forward was to sell the 1985 and the 1990 dump trucks and purchase one new 6x4 13-yard dump truck with underbody scraper and wing. And we had such success with Mr. LaChance on the Hill with finding that old garbage truck. I mean, he didn't find it for us, but, you know, here it suits our needs. So we asked Tim if he would mind, in the auctions that he goes to as a dealer, could he find us some slightly used plow trucks that we could, you know, fix or whatever and make it useful for us. And Mark knew quite a few cities downstate, more wealthy cities, that, you know, they use a plow truck for 5 years and trade it back in for a new one, or, you know, lease it for a couple years and trade it back in. So Tim was excited to, you know, make some phone calls and see if they could find, if he could find a couple used, slightly used plow trucks for us. So,
I can almost guarantee you that most contractors who use heavy equipment around here are not buying brand-new equipment. And they're making money with it, so it can be done if you get the right piece of equipment.
right, yeah. So we'll move forward with that when, you know, when and if we find them, but for now, if we could just get two new plows and fix the skid steer.
This 26,000 is not a budgeted, it's not a budgeted item. What's the impact to the fund balance gonna be, in relation to what we set as far as a minimum fund balance?
We're still above that, because the 1.8 mils brought in like 180,000, 20,000 went to the DDA for their capture. We balanced transfer from fund balance, I think it was 36,000, and then the $85,000 officer was the only thing allocated in the current fiscal year, which we've got 3 more months for, and we still haven't, you know, hired the officer yet.
Okay.
So we haven't really used any of that balance this fiscal year. So,
Which is almost over.
right.
Remember, I've told the commission a number of times, none of our major pieces of equipment have been replaced in 12 years, so we need to start replacing stuff. So I think it's a really good plan to start looking at gently used equipment.
I would move that we transfer the $26,000 and purchase the new plows and fix the skid steer. What is a skid steer?
Like a little Bobcat.
Okay.
I support that.
Moved by Commissioner Nemchek, supported by Commissioner Gay to approve the equipment purchase utilizing a transfer from the general fund to the equipment fund. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion is carried. 2015 City Commission meeting dates are in front of us.
Memorial Day.
We have to approve, yeah. Well, we wouldn't take action to hold or not hold a meeting until closer to the date, but she's pointing out to us right now that that could be a problem because Labor Day, or Memorial Day falls on the same day as meeting's on schedule.
I'd move that we approve the meeting schedule as presented.
I support it.
Moved by Commissioner Mattson, supported by Commissioner Bosick to approve the 2015 City Commission meeting dates. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. That motion is carried. Now we're gonna have tax millage discussion. It says name of responsible staff is Mayor Mackey, but actually Commissioner Gay spoke with me about this matter, so I think probably Matt, you might start the conversation. I thought it was a really, really, really good idea, so.
Well, as everyone knows, we, this commission approved levying an additional 1.8 mils. I can't remember exactly when that was. Was that in June? Prior to the deadline that Department of Treasury set to, for us to provide them that information. I was opposed to that particular, opposed to that primarily for two reasons. One, I don't want to rehash the whole thing, but one of the reasons was there was basically very little public knowledge or involvement in in the decision. And two, we weren't able to, as a commission, lock that money in or earmark that money for specific purposes that we knew we needed to apply additional funding for. We have, actually now, evidently, we're gonna have a election in May for a ballot initiative for increasing the sales tax in Michigan because of the road funding issue, which is a different discussion. But my thought was on this particular thing, there's been a lot of discontent in the community, among residents in regards to this, and my thought was, I don't have a problem with the fact that we definitely need more revenue. The city manager, staff has demonstrated, what we operate on. Commissioner Nemechek has identified it multiple times. We operate on, prior to that decision, 13.8 mils, and I think, Dave, what was the average city in the UP?
Everybody
Was like
else
18
except for
mils.
Norway was 17 to 21.
Right, so they operate, and now we're only at 13.8, 14, 15.6. So we're still a couple mils below where.
We are still one of the lowest.
Yeah, we're
If not
still,
the lowest,
I think we're the lowest, actually.
probably.
So my thought on this was, if we were able to pose the question to the public, and at that time also earmark those funds through a ballot millage request, we would then be able to achieve both of the, basically overcome the two objections I had to the decision we made previously. And my thought on the 1.8, and I'm just gonna throw this out there because my thought on this was to get this out there and start the conversation with the public. My thought on it was commit not to renew the 1.8 and
To let the people decide.
let the people decide on, say, 2.5 or whatever. However, that 2.5 is allocated to X number of mills for this, say, public safety portion, they have their portion of the millage. Whatever other priorities the commission determines based on the input of the public, that we allocate those funds to. So then the public is brought into the conversation, and the 1.8 is, basically, the 1.8 is, I won't say returned, but we annually choose whether to levy that 1.8 or not. And next year, that 1.8 can or cannot be renewed. But I think getting the public involved and telling the public, as a commission, that we commit to, you know, listening to their voice, listening to their priorities, and then we will, you know, essentially utilize that for what they want us to utilize it for without re-upping the 1.8. I think it's a good way to get this conversation started and maybe reach more people and make them aware of where we really are as a city as far as what we're operating on. And I think that's, you know, nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, but, you know, at some point, we're gonna have to address the fact that we have a relatively high school millage in this area. The total millage is relatively high for this, for the county, for sure. But in comparison, the city is, I believe, Dave, the lowest for a city as far as
It's
millage.
either Gladstone or Norway, but
Yeah,
yes.
it's very, very low.
And our total millage is not out of whack either, but the city is low and the school is high. The school's over 24 mils.
Right,
That's high.
yeah.
But we have, you know, there's,
Well, it's,
Well,
That's
the
all been
thing-
voted
The
on.
thing that I think the most important thing I hear you saying is the fact that we're giving people the right to have a say. And as Dave, Commissioner Nemechek has pointed out several times, if you're going to be a full-service city, you either cut someplace else, which, you know, you can argue whether we've cut to the bone or not, or you need to look for new revenue. We discussed at the time we levied that 1.8 mils, our priorities, and I think those priorities are still our priorities, but we're gonna put it in front of the people. We said we need a new fire truck, we needed to properly staff public safety, we needed to start replacing equipment, which we just started to address tonight. We needed to stay committed to staying in City Hall and putting the money into City Hall that it needs to do so that the building doesn't deteriorate faster than we're fixing it. And so those were the items we said we were gonna do, but
well, I think for the benefit of the commissioners and the city residents, I think if we as commissioners committed to the city residents that we are not gonna renew that 1.8, provided it's replaced through, you know, through a very public process, with this millage, you know, proposal, I think that, I think that involving the public, I think that can mend some of the issues, the complaints and the discontent that I've been hearing, and we've all been hearing, actually.
absolutely, it's just,
So I
there's
think-
no doubt that there were some people who weren't happy with the process, the way we did it, and so we're saying, okay, what would you do? By putting in a form of a ballot question.
refresh my memory, the 1.8 is voted on annually?
Absolutely.
Along with the
Is-
13
That's the
is voted
only
on
part of the millage that's voted on annually?
No, actually, our whole millage rate is voted on annually.
That's what I
and-
thought.
Right, exactly. So
Okay.
instead of levying 13, let's say 13.5, don't hold me right to the number, but it's like 13.5. We levied 1.8 mils more than 13.5, which is what we had been levying in the past.
Right, okay. I personally don't have any problem increasing the millage because it's necessary. I don't think in the long run, the city can be a full-service city with what we have now. I think it needs to be more.
You know.
And this would give us more,
I think I agree, I know I agree with you.
yeah.
I think we've had the discussion that, you know, I wasn't opposed to the increase, I was just opposed to.
No, I understand, and you
And
know,
I think
I'm new
actually-
I'm new at this political situation here, and to me, there was a problem, to me, there was an answer. To me, something should be done, so we did it. But that's what I'm used to doing. I'm not used to having a lot of hearings and all this sort of thing, and I know that there are a few people that were upset by it, but, you know, most people realize I think it was necessary.
if we are gonna have some discussion, more discussion on this and bring it to the public for their input, I know there's some time constraints with this, I
Yep.
believe, correct?
February 10th, right? Correct?
The commission, per Nancy Kolich is the county clerk. Her response is the city commission would have to approve placing the proposal on the ballot and the ballot wording by resolution before February 10th.
I would suggest to the commission that we have a very well publicized public hearing on probably our next meeting, certainly no later than the second meeting in January, so that we can take action before February 10th.
As soon as possible, because
Next.
that's gonna put staff,
Well, that's where we
February
go to the
9th
city
is,
manager.
February 9th is the commission meeting, the
That's
first
my
commission
birthday.
meeting in
Happy
February.
birthday.
So we would have two
Is it-
meetings in January.
Is it 2.5 or 3, or do we know what?
I just threw that number
No,
out
I
there.
know, but we should have a number before we have a hearing.
Yes, we should.
I think Mayor's right. I think we have the same goals, the old equipment, the fire truck, the building, the public safety officer. I think those are all the needs that we have. I think everybody agrees on those.
Yep.
We all know that the public safety director and the department felt like, please don't make me a promise for something that you can't keep as far as an officer. I've had volunteer firemen come up and say to me, we're hearing rumors, you guys really aren't gonna purchase a fire truck for us. And I said, we're gonna purchase a fire truck. We have to figure that out somehow. We have to do it. We all know the equipment's old. We all know this building is where the people want us to stay, and we need to put money in this building.
Right, I understand.
One of the things that when we passed the budget originally, when we did not include a public safety officer, the biggest concerns that, from general public and public safety officers alike, that we heard was, is the funding gonna be there next year? And that's a legitimate concern.
Absolutely.
Because if someone gets laid off, we're not the ones that has to lay them off. It's
I
the
understand.
director or any of the department heads that had. So I think through this process with us earmarking those funds, that is going to provide a very nice level of comfort for public safety director, a new public safety officer, the volunteer firefighters, the parks and or public works, guys, the equipment. That's gonna provide a level of comfort that those dollars coming in are allocated specifically for that purpose. I think we actually have an opportunity to ensure that, what we view as priorities are actually met into the future beyond
Right.
our term. So,
I think we need to have our city manager put that in the, put the numbers down again and just see how many mills we need.
Right.
Because I think it's more than 2.5.
I do too.
Well, the concern I got was just, as far as the time, we know that we have to do this by February 10th. What's your schedule look like?
Well, we have most of those numbers pretty much, those have been mulled over more than once.
Right.
So that you don't have a problem with that?
Well, let's see. January 12th is the next commission meeting. Packets will go out January 8th. So, yeah, I'm back on the 5th, but like I think Dave said, we just get out that presentation. I think it was May, we did that PowerPoint and identified those things. We had
Right.
numbers then. Maybe we can just firm up those numbers.
Yeah.
well, I
They
think,
may be as firm as we're gonna get, but that's what we have.
Right.
And as long as we're
Yep.
not
Well, I
not
believe-
pessimistic about it, I think we're gonna be all right.
I believe through the budget process, I'll paraphrase, but what you were saying, you were kind of explaining something about your church and they, if people understand, they're willing to give.
Yes.
Okay? I think that's where we're at, is it's our job to communicate that so that they understand what we need to provide them what they want. So that's kind of,
No, I
that's
know.
my focus,
Same
is the
comment I heard
communication.
from some people who did not like the process we followed. They said, if you'd asked right, we probably would support it.
Now we're gonna ask to
Now
support
we're
more.
gonna ask right.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Well,
the
the-
DPW building was on that
We-
list too.
And the DPW building,
Yes.
thank you. I knew I was
Right.
forgetting a
Yeah,
fifth one, and I was,
The challenge we have is that we now know that the state of Michigan is going to have a 1 cent increase to the sales tax also on the same ballot.
Right.
I don't know if that's a challenge or a blessing, one of the two. I think everyone would agree we need more funding for roads, and I frankly think that that's a good way to do it, provided that those dollars go to the roads and not to every pet project, which is why I'm so adamant about if we do a millage, that we lock that in for the purpose in which we intended it, and
you know
future
what you
commission
just,
can't use it for
you know what
something
you just
else.
described is exactly what's probably not going to happen at the state level.
I understand that, which bothers me, but I don't want, I would rather.
Right?
Well, yeah, we know that, but fortunately, we have the opportunity to, not follow suit here, and I think it would be a good way forward. I think
Yep.
we have to hammer away at at providing, disseminating the information to the public and getting them into the conversation so we can explain to them what we need, why we need it.
If we are going to have the thought process that all of the additional 2.5, 3.5, 3 mills, whatever it ends up being, goes toward these specific projects, we better be sure that we can run the city on 13.5 mills, because that's all that's left.
Right.
So we may end up saying, of that, we have to put half of a mill to run, I mean, you know what I'm saying? You can't specifically itemize that whole increase, because part of it might be needed for running the city itself.
And I think to any reasonable person, if you explain that to them,
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna be
No,
an
it's
issue.
not a problem, but I'm just saying that we keep that in perspective, because,
See, I think the positive outweighs the negative in this endeavor. Especially if we communicate, get the information out and involve them in the conversation. I think that's,
well,
So for January 12th, I think the public hearing notice needs to be posted 10 days prior to that, so, but before that, we will have this list, the proposed dollar amounts that will firm them up, which will equate to a number of additional millage, and then that'll be in the posting for the public hearing on January 12th. If that's favorable, then January 26th, we can have proposed language.
okay.
And then February 9th would have to be yes or no to be
I-
placed on the ballot.
I see there's no media, there's no reporter here tonight. Is there any way that we can make that more visible than
The
our
January 12th
standard?
meeting?
Yeah, the
Well, that's what
public
I meant
hearing.
when I said public
Can
hearing
we-
that's well publicized. Somehow
Yeah.
we need to get the word out.
Yeah,
Sure.
we need to get
Yeah,
the
we
word
can
out.
do, we typically don't advertise in the daily press just due to the cost. We do Action Shopper, so we can do both, Action Shopper and daily press.
I just, the key to this is getting the public involved and getting them,
Maybe run
explaining
it
our
a couple
position.
times in both papers.
Yeah, whatever the best method to get that information out.
So we're setting a public hearing tonight, correct?
You would need to set it tonight for
So we need a motion.
January 12th, yeah.
Also, well,
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Nemecheck, supported by Commissioner Gay to set a public hearing for our next regular meeting to discuss a proposal to put a ballot question out on May for millage rate for the city to discuss the uses of that additional millage we would be asking the people to vote on, and to have a presentation from staff available at that next meeting so that we can more clearly identify to the public what we would do with that money should they approve the millage. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion is carried.
Most people probably don't realize that 1 mill represents approximately $100,000, right?
Yep.
It's not $1 million, it's
No.
$100,000.
Um,
I always thought it was more.
and I gotta tell you, just for sake of throwing it out there, I think our bigger our bigger goal should be growth, and I think we do have the possibility to grow if we exploit certain areas. You kind of pointed out one of them at a placemaking meeting recently, and I've asked Commissioner Matten if he would be willing to sit down with me and make a contact with the owners of that waterfront property, and Commissioner Matten said, yeah, I'd be cool with that, except he just told me tonight he's taking off here real shortly till March. So maybe I might have another commissioner. I'd like to make a contact with the property owners and say, hey, is there something we can do? Is there some reason why this hasn't happened? I think there's some signs right now that the people are looking at investing again. There's some pickup in the economy, so I think we need to be proactive. We have an asset that's underperforming.
I agree.
So I will be getting with the city manager on that after, she's gonna be on vacation for a little while here at the holidays, so sometime after the holidays, we'll be looking at that. Next item on our agenda, 5:30 this morning, I got a text message from Kim saying that her little boy Logan had the flu on Friday night, and she's got it now, and could she possibly miss her evaluation? I said, well, of course. I mean, if you're sick, we're not gonna make you come in here and do an evaluation, so, you know, so, we're not gonna be doing the evaluation of Kim tonight. She's not here, she's homesick.
The only thing that she said that needs to be done is for a motion to table her evaluation until next
Can I get a motion?
commission.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Gay, supported by Commissioner Mattinen to table the city clerk evaluation for this evening's meeting and have it for our next regular meeting. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion's carried. We'll move to the city manager's reports.
I just have a couple. Mother Nature is not really cooperating with us, and we have to close the ski hill until this coming Saturday. Looked at the weather, and it's just too warm for us to even make snow. Chance of snow and rain the next couple days. That rain just washes our hill right away, so.
She teases us for a while.
Yep, we were open Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, but we're closed now. We'll open up Saturday, December 27th. And hopefully have a whole week of New Year's there to
We
people.
have the capacity to keep, to build a lot of snow on the hill, but,
Yeah.
but if it gets warm, I'm sure it just goes right down.
Well, that was the target that was indicated
Right.
in the plan, was that between Christmas and New Year's there's a significant amount of revenue there that we weren't capitalizing on, so
So if we can get a week instead of,
it's better
You know.
than
I
nothing.
don't know, has
Right.
anybody looked at the long-term forecast?
Jason was in today and he just looked at this week. He didn't mention, he thought comfortable that we would be
It's not
open
gonna cool down till the
next week.
weekend. This week is rain and snow mix.
Today, I'm sure
Weekend.
we're losing base all over the
Kind
place.
of a great Christmas thing.
Last week, I had a couple phone calls with Gary LaPlante. He's the director of the Delta County Community Foundation. And we were talking about Senate Bill 1125, which, if approved, would allow community foundations to invest cemetery perpetual care funds, which the city has a cemetery perpetual care fund. Right now, we have to invest that according to Public Act 20, like the rest of the city money. If Senate Bill 1125 is successful in passing, we would be allowed to have, like, Community Foundation invest that money for us, where we could make a higher return. I told them I would be in favor of that. The city has about $260,000 in the perpetual care fund that we're not making any money on because investments these days that we're restricted to, so. In the recap that I just read before the meeting, there was a summation of what the legislature passed. I didn't see Senate Bill 1125, so I don't know if it passed, if it's still, they're still working on it, I don't know. So we'll keep our eye open for that. I think you guys got the email from, I got it from several sources, Dave Nyberg, that the city did, Governor Snyder approved $2.7 million from the Michigan Disaster and Emergency Contingency Fund, also known as Section 19 funding. The city of Gladstone was awarded $100,000 on that. I can share, exactly what the communities received. Not everybody received $100,000, so.
We've received just under 300,000 before, so we've got like $400,000 to help us with last winter.
And that was primarily based on our documentation.
Right.
If I remember correctly, the meeting that we attended.
Eric Buckman did a really nice
Yes,
job.
Yeah, you did.
That's what I was getting at. It was based on proper documentation, so.
So that was good news. A little bit of bad news. We were informed from Department of Natural Resources that we were not awarded the Passport Grant. We were looking for, I think it was $70,000 to help us renovate one of the fields and build a new one up at the sports park. We're gonna apply again in March and try again, so hopefully we can redo some wording or, you know, somehow convince them that we do need some funding for that, so. Just wanted to share, Renee Barron, the Director of Community Development, and I have had a couple conversations regarding two new developments. I wouldn't mention it if we weren't, you know, far enough along. I can't tell you who they are yet, but very, very, very positive, you know, documents are signed. We're pretty sure they're moving forward. One company currently in Escanaba, expanding, so they want to have an office in Gladstone, so that's good. And then an existing company in Gladstone expanding. So hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, those two will be developed in 2015. And that's Merry Christmas to everybody.
Okay, moving on to city commission and committee reports. We do have a financial update for fiscal year 2014, 2015 from the city treasurer, who happens to be the acting clerk tonight, doing double duty.
Well, this is just, the normal monthly report, second meeting of every month. And these are, for the fiscal year, month ending November 30th, so everybody should be pretty much, 70%. If they're higher, that's a seasonal item. If they're more closer to 100% or something
The
like
beach
that.
should be 100%, right?
That means it's more of a seasonal item. Other than that,
Are there any numbers that are a problem in your view, or are they're all okay?
everybody's pretty much right on budget. Anything, that would have been, a budget amendment would have been approved at last month's meeting, so, and those were very minimal too,
Thank you.
not very much.
Along those lines, when you're getting really close to starting to, or if you haven't already started to prepare a budget for next fiscal year, what millage rate are you gonna use?
We haven't discussed that yet. My last staff meeting, we looked at the capital improvement plan. A lot of supervisors are off for the holidays here, so January, the first Tuesday in January, the department heads all have their sheets, so they can start plunking in numbers and whatever. Haven't had a discussion on what,
See, they're gonna, the way what I'm getting at there, and she knows this, is depending on what the voters say, and if we put a ballot proposal, we may have a different revenue projection than when you start the year out with. Okay, moving on to boards and commission reports. I attended a 911 meeting for Director Geyer so he could go on vacation, and there were a couple of items that came up at the meeting, and I sent a memo to you. I think you were gonna, is that what I'm talking about?
Paul Bear again from Public Safety. I wish it was vacation that I was on, but it wasn't. It's
Oh, I
work
thought you were on
related.
oh,
No,
I thought you told me you were on vacation.
no,
When you were begging for me to go to the meeting in your place.
correct.
Yeah, right.
Two things that you asked about that were talked about at the meeting, one being the closest car concept that Central Dispatch uses in dispatching police and fire services, not so much fire services, excuse me, but police services in the county. It doesn't necessarily apply to us per se, because we're contained within the municipality. They call the available Gladstone car. If there's another car tied up on a call, they would call the free car to the next complaint. In the county, however, the state police and the Delta County Sheriff's Department do utilize a closest car concept where dispatch will pull over the radio, they'll pull where the cars are located at, and if the call is in, say, Ford River and there's a car on M35 South, that's probably the car that's gonna handle that call. The dispatch services are looking at down the line supplying our cars all in the county with what's called AVLs, or automatic vehicle locators. It's used in a lot of other areas around the country to where digitally via GPS and via a software program that dispatch would have, they could see where each car was at. So they wouldn't have to pull the cars necessarily to get that radio time about figuring out, you know, who's the closest car to respond. So that's essentially the concept of closest car, that,
Sometime, however, one of the two agencies that are outside the city doesn't have a car available.
there are times that happens, yep. So then it's just whoever is available to go. The other issue that you asked about in the email that the UP 911 board is looking at through regional grant funding is supplying police officers in the UP with body-worn cameras, which are kind of a buzz topic right now with some of the recent incidents that have happened around the country. We're ahead of the curve, I believe, in that we have issued our officers body-worn cameras. In fact, I'm wearing one this evening. You know, there's good aspects and as well as some unrealistic expectations of those body-worn cameras, and I think as the issue becomes more discussed and talked about on a nationwide basis, you know, those issues and concerns will be drawn out in the sense that these don't record a full shift's worth of, you know, nonstop, you know, contact. They're limited to time, they're limited to having to be activated by the officers. There's concerns and questions over privacy issues. There's concerns over how do I, as the administrator of the department, deal with Freedom of Information Act requests that come in about this, and what's, you know, what would be too personal of a nature to release, you know, via a FOIA request. The fact that these cameras don't give you a 360-degree view of what's going on around an officer at a particular contact. So there are several studies being done that have been done and they're currently being done by not only our insurance carrier, but MML as well, who we have our workman's comp coverage through, discussing the various issues and pitfalls and concerns for use of these cameras. I sent an email to the city manager in response to your question, stating that these are just another great tool that we might have, but they're not the solve-all of liability concerns or anything else. I mean, they're another tool that I can use to utilize, to go back and see if someone's complaint possibly regarding an officer was valid, or, but again, there's limitations. There's, you know, like any piece of equipment, it can fail, and it does have limitations in terms of the amount of time that it and the, you know, it's not the same as an officer taking in everything on their senses, you know, at the scene. So
Well, we've all heard nationally that the federal government, which has much bigger, has really big problems that they don't seem to be able to get their arms around and solve, is deciding they want to step in on some of these incidents that we read about on the news every day, and this is their solution. And obviously, it's not a simple solution as it's being portrayed in the national media based on what you've just shared with us.
no.
Now, it came up at 911 because the emergency preparedness coordinator for the county indicated he was able to access some grant funds to purchase these devices for the various law enforcement agencies in Delta County.
Yeah, there is that possibility of us receiving some grant money to do that. There are literally dozens and dozens of different manufacturers of these different types of systems, some that are relatively inexpensive, some that are highly expensive, you know, and they all have different limitations and different aspects that we're gonna have to continue to look into. And a lot of it could depend on whether there's some sort of legislation that comes about requiring us to use them.
That's been floated as a possibility.
Yeah, I just don't, the thing I would caution the commission, and I would caution, you know, anybody that I talk to about this is that they are a great tool, another tool that we have to try to perform our functions in the community. But they are not a solve-all in terms of getting everything on tape per se, or ensuring that, you know, even sometimes what you see on the cameras is a little bit different than what actually took place, because again, it's narrow point of view is here. It's not everything that may be happening outside that.
No,
that
I
focus.
think the big push on those is, it's tantamount to armchair quarterbacking a situation, an isolated incident that was politicized, and we all know the story. I think the purpose, the best use of those is at the officer's discretion for something that he or she is trying to, a situation where they know that there could be a problem and I want to cover myself. As you indicated, they have to be activated. So in order for them to be activated, the officer has to activate them. Being used in that sense, I think it's a great tool. As far as somebody, a third party, sitting somewhere behind a video screen, second guessing or armchair quarterbacking one-dimensional view of a three-dimensional situation, I think they're a horrible tool.
Okay.
But that's,
Say, for instance, you're an officer and somebody is trying to wrestle your gun away from you. Are you gonna try and turn your camera on, or are you gonna try and fight for your gun?
Well, and that's been one of the main concerns that has been brought up in the national debate over this with the incident that happened in Ferguson, Missouri, is the question that there probably never would have been a chance to activate that
No.
camera unless it was during the struggle that took place, so.
And that's the
I can-
case that the federal government is saying, well, this would have solved it all. Well, that's just not true.
Yeah, I can guarantee you, in specific answer to your question is, I would not be activating the camera. I would be, you know. So, like I said, there are other limitations that need to be considered, and we need to have a good policy in place. I have a policy that's in place, you know, that combines our in-car cameras with our body-worn cameras. But it's a living policy per se, because it always could change with any new legislation that might come out, and it does. There are issues that present themselves with FOIA requests. You know, there was recently another change to the FOIA laws that is coming out that is going to be good and bad in some ways, you know, for us to try to deal with those requests. In addition to, as far as the 911 board, just to let you know what's been taking place on that, the millage was approved in the last election. So I can say that millage that was reapproved has never fully been implemented at that amount. I believe we're about 0.35 mils, I think, is what's being
Yep.
assessed at this point, which I think the highest it had been at was 0.5, and it's allowed to go up to 0.75 depending on what the board decides, but we've been able to keep that down as low as we can and still operate a very effective local communications center for our police and fire. So
The better answer to a vest camera is not to have an officer working alone.
well, you may have noticed that New York City has since put out a policy that none of their officers on foot will be alone. Their detectives will work in groups of 3. Their different units that they have will not delve off into individual areas. And
We had a shooting in the city of Munising. I mean, it's well known, it's on TV6 News all the time. That officer was all alone.
Mhm.
He had to make a decision, he had to make a quick decision because there was no backup available or anywhere near him.
right.
That could have turned out a whole lot different if he had a partner, I think.
I view the camera as just as much a liability as it is an asset, and maybe even more a liability in certain situations. But you can also assume, based on society today, as we saw specifically in Ferguson, Missouri, video and audio recordings, they're all over the place. In that particular situation, there was someone on a phone conversation, a voicemail that recorded something that was important to that particular case, and they had no idea until after that, you know,
Right.
so a lot of people, every one of these has a video recorder on it, and a lot of people use them, and there's other pieces of equipment that are scattered all over in public that have video as well. But
We're still 911 out of Escanaba, aren't we? Or is-
Yes.
but
Yes.
Is there talk of making it Negaunee or is UP-wide?
Nope.
No, not really. A few years ago, there was a push to consolidate
That's what I remember.
PSAPs, which is your public safety answering points.
But that never happened.
That never happened. The thought was that they maybe would have 7 or 8 throughout the state, which is basically the way they divide the Michigan State Police districts up.
Okay.
If they were to do that, you would see one dispatching center for the entire Upper Peninsula, which, you know, the arguments against that per se is that someone sitting up in Negaunee that lives in Big Bay has no idea, you know, the individual characteristics of the streets in Gladstone or, you know, as far as dispatching calls,
Right.
so.
Okay,
But I don't, yeah, no, not at this point. They're,
I'm glad.
you know,
There was some conversation I've had with you at one of the meetings where, Schoolcraft County is presently using the Negaunee Post to do their 911 dispatching, and they were talking about maybe doing the dispatching here in our county for Schoolcraft as well.
the board has entertained that as an item of discussion. I don't think it's ever been formally addressed by the board, but the chairman of the boards for both areas, the county boards, I believe, discussed it as a way to consolidate some services. Mr. Beerbaum, the
Also
emergency.
to get better service.
Yeah, Bob Beerbaum, the emergency management coordinator, he is the coordinator for both Delta and Schoolcraft counties, so there is some talk on that end, but right now Schoolcraft County goes through Negaunee, which is the Michigan State Police Regional
Right.
Dispatching Center.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're back to public comment again. Hearing nothing. Moving to city commissioner comments, starting with Commissioner Nemechek.
Well, not too much more to say. Merry Christmas to everyone. Everybody has a good holiday with friends and family.
Am I gonna see you working on Christmas Day?
Very possible at the church with Christmas dinner, yes.
My wife and I are doing, so.
Well, that's a great place for people to go, 12 to 1:30. Or if you can't get out, just call and someone will deliver the meal to you.
That's what my wife and I are gonna be doing.
There
And
you
from
go.
what I understand, there are some people who, on that day, don't get the chance to talk to any other human being, and they really wanna talk to you in addition to getting the meal.
Right. It's a social event also, sure. It's good.
Commissioner Bostrick,
Yeah, I'm also volunteering at that Christmas dinner.
we'll see you there.
Yes, and just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a safe and Happy New Year.
Are you gonna bring some pizzas?
No.
That's a traditional Christmas dish, pizza.
that's where it works.
Commissioner Gay?
I'd echo the same comments. Merry Christmas to everyone. With this warm weather we're having, I want to let everyone know, I don't know what the conditions of the ice are, because after last winter, I no longer have an interest in ice fishing. It's a little too cold for me. But I'm sure with the warmer weather and the rain and that we've had, it could compromise the ice conditions. So if you're going on the ice, be careful. Other than that, have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
My wife and I watched a guy go off the front of our house 2 days ago on a four-wheeler, and we both said, boy, that guy's gotta be crazy. I didn't see him go in the waters. Commissioner Mattinen?
Yeah, I'd too like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and for everyone just to maybe take a few minutes and really be thankful and really appreciate what they have, because I know at this time of the year, we all get so busy, and be thankful for the gift that we've been given. That's all I have.
Yeah. Couple items that were on our email server from the MML. DDA legislation won't be taken up during the lame duck session. One of the things as I read through here really quickly is limits on the amount of fund balance a DDA can be build up. Guess they're saying that if you have enough money, you don't need any more. And the House Committee passed problematic rental inspection legislation. I'm sure Mr. Johnson will be interested in that. It places some limits on revenues that the program can collect and additional barriers to entry when attempting to inspect a tenant's property. The whole reason why cities have rental inspection programs is because if you study the census data, most people who rent in Delta County, and I'm sure it's true anywhere else, are living inside the boundaries of a city. They're not living outside the boundaries of a city where you tend to be more owner-occupied, and it creates some problems if you don't regulate it. So, I noted also on our web server, there's some legislation on marijuana provisioning centers.
That was defeated in the late session of Friday night, I believe. It's not, unless have to be brought up next year.
If at all.
The chiefs of police, MSP, and the Sheriff's Association all lobbied very vehemently that legislation not be approved. That would have caused a lot more issues, at least from our point of view. So it was, I don't know if it just wasn't called for a vote or if it was turned down, or voted down.
We held some meetings at the DDA. We've been meeting with a newly forming Gladstone Merchants Association. They've had Commissioner Mattinen at a meeting, Commissioner Nemechek at a meeting, so we're moving forward to establish a relationship between the DDA and the Merchants Association and the city going forward, addressing some issues. I think we've done a good job of addressing those issues, especially the city manager. And so we'll keep pressing forward. I distributed a memo to the commissioners on some of the concerns that the merchants had. I'm going to be bringing those to the DDA board to discuss. There was some issue about the second water main feeding our reservoir, which provides pressure to the whole city, and after an explanation was given, the opposition to that program being funded by the DDA was no longer there. They said, that really is a good idea. The whole community benefits. I received a nice compliment from our newly hired supervisor, Mr. Palega, from Mr. Gay, one of our citizens. And then our building official actually called me up to tell me that he wanted to give a compliment to Eric Buckman. Of course, they are personal friends. He said Eric was doing a construction project for the shore well, and they talked about whether he needed a permit, and Eric said, yes, I need a permit, and here's all the paperwork, and he had it all in line and ready for him. So he called me up and he said, I really think you ought to give him, give him a little bit of public notice that he did a really good job. So thank you to Mr. Buckman. It didn't surprise me because Mr. Buckman's a pretty good supervisor. So, and of course, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas as well. If you have no place else to be, come on down to the dinner and we'll all visit with you. With that, stand adjourned.